Good evening, everyone. I'm Sandeep Mahal. I'm a trustee of the Women's Prize Trust. I'm also one of the judges for Discoveries and director of Nottingham UNESCO City of Literature. It's a huge pleasure to be welcoming so many of you here tonight for this very special webinar on our Pioneering Discoveries programme, delivered by the Women's Prize Trust and powered by Curtis Brown and NatWest. We have looking at the number of participants, over 114 people here this evening, and the numbers I see are continuing to rise. It's incredible to have so many of you with us tonight for what promises to be a very special evening, celebrating your achievements, sharing insights from industry experts, and encouraging you to keep on writing. Now, for 26 years, the Women's Prize for Fiction has championed female writers to tell their own stories and make sure as diverse and wide range of voices are heard. It's a prize that is steered and run by women, and the award itself is judged by women. It honours the creativity of female writers and shines a spotlight on their dazzling brilliance. And there's just 1 week to go now until we reveal the 2021 Women's Prize shortlist, and I'm bursting to see which books make the final 6. Which 6 books get your vote from the exceptional long list? Tell us in the chat box. As part of our charitable remit to honour all women's voices, regardless of class, ethnicity, geography, educational opportunity or age, we took on a new ambitious challenge by launching the Discoveries programme to mentor, support and engage with women who have less access to the publishing process. We first announced Discoveries at the 2020 Women's Prize Longlist celebratory event last March, and in September 2020, we opened submissions from women of all ages and backgrounds to submit their work of fiction. And the programme doesn't require writers to have finished a novel, only the opening 3 chapters are up to 10,000 words, and it was completely free to enter. Now, I think it's fair to say that when we launched the Discoveries programme in March last year, we could not have predicted that a global pandemic would disrupt our outreach and community engagement work. So the first thing I'd like to say is thank you to the thousands of brilliant entrants for submitting to the Discoveries programme in lockdown conditions. And the second thing I'd like to say is huge congratulations on writing the first 10,000 words of your novel. It's such a fantastic achievement, and we have been blown away by your talent and your ideas. As a judge of Discoveries and a passionate advocate for new voices, and as a nurturer and champion of new writing talent in my home city of Nottingham, what I've seen through the Discoveries programme is huge potential. I was really impressed by the readiness of many of the writers. There's a great strength and confidence of voice, of plotting, of narrative, and a beautiful way with words and characters that have stayed with me. And after I finished reading, just a small sample, this magical sense of wanting to read more. I certainly haven't been disappointed by anything I've read so far. And I think as well, what's been really interesting for me is that reading Discoveries has stretched me genre-wise. It's made me read things I wouldn't normally read, and that makes Discoveries really exciting, that finding brilliant new female writing talent that are going to take us to new places and that are going to make us feel things too. I'm so intrigued to hear from our expert reader panel on what it's been like for them. We'll hear their advice on what to do now that you've written and submitted your 10,000 words, and have a discussion on getting published. Please do pop your questions for the panel using the Q&A box, and we will aim to get as many answered as possible. Now, before I introduce our panel, I'm really pleased to have Georgina here from NatWest to give us a little insight to NatWest's Business Builder programme and how it can support you as a budding writer. Welcome, Georgina. The Zoom stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Sandy, and thank you to everybody for giving me the opportunity to join you this evening. NatWest has been one of the partners of the Women's Prize since 2018, and we're really proud to be able to also support you with Discoveries. Our purpose at NatWest is to help people, families and businesses to thrive, and we're really excited to offer you all access to our Business Builder programme, which will help you with the right tools and insight to reach your writing potential. But before I go into any more detail, a little bit about me. My name's Georgina, and I'm the Regional Enterprise Manager in the London and South East for NatWest Enterprise, helping to support entrepreneurs across our community and the businesses that we bank also. A keen reader, as you can see in the background as well, and great to be here this evening. So let's crack on. So Business Builder is what you've had access to, and it's a completely free online tool, which is entirely self-served and can be accessed 24/7 through our dedicated online portal. Essentially, it's a bit like Netflix for entrepreneurs or budding writers like yourselves. You can tap into it at any time and watch and engage with as little or as much as you like. It's designed initially to support entrepreneurs and business owners to upskill and develop themselves and their business at a time and pace that suits them. But when we were approached by the Discoveries team, we thought it would be really applicable for you guys as writers. You may not see the correlation between support for being an entrepreneur and having just written 10,000 words, but how we see it, you've just done the hardest part of both writing a book and running a business, starting. Now you've got those 10,000 words, the world's your oyster. Really, these are just all one and the same, and you've really made it. A huge congratulations. You can now call yourself a writer and an entrepreneur as well. It's just the beginning. And we really want to give you the confidence from NatWest to go out there and achieve your dreams. If you want to make a success of it, you have to own it. Your time is precious. It's money at the end of the day. There's so much more to being a writer than just writing. You need to test your ideas, gain traction with your book, and get it published and seek investment. Sounds familiar to being an entrepreneur, right? Or having a side hustle. That's why NatWest have teamed up with Discoveries to help you build your skills as a writer and an author. Through the Business Builder program, you can access some of the content and resources available to help your journey. Some of these that you might include are how to create a 60-second pitch. So how do you summarize your book in a really short space of time, gain readers, and build excitement about your story? The power of mindset, another topic that we look at. Using the right frame of mind to do what you set out to do and get published. Another topic is visioning, something else you might want to tap into. Are you thinking about a trilogy? What's your long-term strategy as an author? Do you want to do more titles? What do you want to achieve ultimately? From just as little as 15 minutes, there's content for everybody for you to upskill and learn. Just spend small time on your success and it will go a long way. You will learn how to monetize your time as a writer and invest in your value. Going into a bit more detail about the platform that you'll have access to, users can access a blended program of support consisting of these three pillars. Digital learning. Our digital modules are central to the Business Builder journey, taking entrepreneurs through the essential building blocks of your business model, or in your case, your book, and encouraging you to answer the right questions and complete exercises to help you learn about what it means to be an entrepreneur and implement into your ideas and your writing as well. The digital modules are delivered in a variety of different forms, from downloadable workbooks to videos, and just simply reading as well. Whatever suits you best, we've got it. Secondly, we understand the power of community. All of you here today are fantastic writers, and we think it's a fantastic community to bring together. And therefore, the Business Builder is a great way for you to connect with one another and test your ideas and your stories. We understand the power of this collaborative community, so we connect to entrepreneurs on a digital platform to support you through your entrepreneurial journey. This online community platform gives entrepreneurs access to digital tools and techniques, and we host events through this platform to help engage you in different topics. And then finally, we deliver online workshops as well, because to surround you with the right people and the right knowledge to take your business from good to great. Some of these topics are just those that I delivered before, around around mindset, visioning, and thinking about the future. But there are so many more topics, and I really thoroughly engage you to go on there and check them out. Finally, the overall winner of the competition will receive further wraparound support from our entrepreneurial ecosystem specialists and my wider team. All that leaves me to say is best of luck to everybody, and I can't wait to read the worthy winner.
Thank you so much, Georgina. There is so much on offer, and I hope you'll all make the most of NatWest's blended programme of support, the events and online community. So, to our panel this evening, I am delighted to introduce Bea Carvalho, Head Fiction Buyer at Waterstones. Hello, Bea.
Hi.
Ori Agbaje-Williams, Editor at Borough Press. Hello.
Hi.
Viola Hayden, Associate Agent at Curtis Brown.
Hello, everyone.
And Millie Seward, Senior Publicity Manager at Little Brown. Welcome to you all. Now, it has been the most exceptional, extraordinary, challenging year, and yet we have found sustenance and joy and inspiration from women's voices. So if I may start by asking each of you to briefly describe your role and the one positive thing you're taking away from the experience of reading Discoveries. And Bea, if we can start with you.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Bea. I'm the fiction buyer for Waterstones. So I started out as a bookseller in various shops around London, and for the past 10 years or so, I've been working in the central buying team. So I'm really lucky to have a kind of overview of the whole industry and work with publishers on launching debut authors and planning major releases as well. And also to work closely with the booksellers on the ground, who, after all, kind of know best what the customers are looking for out there and what everybody wants to read. So it's been incredible to work on Discoveries, as Sandy said, kind of reading across all genres, and just seeing the confidence out there and the imagination has been absolutely incredible. And it's just been really wonderful to imagine these kind of seeds growing into full books, and imagine pressing them into the hands of booksellers and customers alike in the future. So it's really kind of heartening to think of how healthy the genre is, and think of all of you as kind of future writers. So yeah.
That's really great. I love that visioning of future writers, and we get to read about them first. Thank you, Bea. Ori, what about for you?
Hi, yes, I'm Ori, and I'm an editor at the Borough Press, which is a fiction and non-fiction imprint at HarperCollins, and we sit within the sort of Harper Fiction division. And for me, one of the most incredible things about reading for the Discoveries Prize, which actually you mentioned, Sandeep, was the fact that it really broadened my scope in terms of genres that I read. And I used to be very fixed. I used to read really only, actually, when I was really young, I only really used to read commercial fiction, and I was massive and still a massive on Sophie Kinsella, who's a legend. And then I sort of moved over to more literary fiction as I got older and went to university. And then I started in publishing, and I was like, yeah, I'm literary fiction all the way. And then suddenly realized actually I really love crime fiction. I love a bit of fantasy here and there. And there's a whole broad range of genres that I sort of close myself off to. So reading for the Discoveries Prize really allowed me to sort of get back into that and discover more genres that I like. And also to be able to note down some future writers that I'll be pestering agents for later on.
Fabulous, thank you so much. Millie, what is it that you loved about the reading the entries to the Discoveries Prize?
Oh, so many. Yes, hi, I'm Millie. I work in publicity for Little Brown, specifically on the Sphere and the dialogue lists. Yeah, I absolutely love, because as a publicist, I don't often get to read in this way, so like got from the very ground up, and normally I read things when they're a bit further down the line. So I just absolutely loved being part of someone's journey from the very beginning. And yes, I think like everyone has said so far, yeah, reading outside my normal genres as well was great, and I just loved every experience of it, so thank you.
Thanks, Millie. And Viola, how was it for you?
Oh, it's been brilliant. I'm Viola, and I'm an agent at Curtis Brown and part of the core Discoveries team, which so it means I've been working on it for since kind of inception. And I think it's just been amazing to kind of partly sort of start up this prize that really feels like it's hopefully going to be a really meaningful thing for the person who wins it to kind of get that start. But also just so inspiring to see everybody, every entry, like the creativity, goodness me, the discipline it must have taken to sit down and actually write 10,000 words in lockdown and kind of get it all on paper has just been absolutely amazing. Of course, reading outside genre has been a real treat. And also like we don't often get time to read at our desks in our jobs, and I think, you know, using this as a time to sort of say I'm doing something for Discoveries has been a real treat. So just kind of fully immersing myself in the world of that everyone's created, and the kind of creativity is so wonderful.
Thank you so much. That's been a brilliant insight and joyous experience as well, I think, for everybody. And also it's making me think about the tremendous responsibility we have as a judging panel now. We need to get to a long list by saying, not that, but this. And it feels tragic in a way that we're saying that, because, you know, there will have to be definite yeses and maybes and no, because this is somebody's work, and the amount of time and heart that goes into writing 10,000 words. But today we're here to say, keep going. You've made it this far. It's not the end. There's a lot of quality stuff out there. And we really, really want to help develop people to get to that finished draft. So what tips and advice can you offer to our audience on getting to full draft manuscript? And Viola, if I may start with you, as an agent, where should our audience go from here?
I think it's really important to keep going with whatever kind of scheduling you found works for you, to keep that creative writing process going, and keep, you know, earmarking time every day, every week, every month, whatever it is that you find kind of works for you, and just keep going. I think, you know, everyone has different ways of doing their storyboarding or whatever it is, so I'll leave that to you. But I do think kind of maybe setting deadlines and kind of saying, I hope I'm going to, you know, get a full manuscript in the next 6 months. I think it's really important. But also, of course, you know, if something's not working for you in that particular day, you know, the creative juices just aren't flowing, pay attention to that, walk away, come back, go for a walk, and then come back. I mean, I should mention, I'm not somebody who's ever managed to put pen to paper, so I'm highly impressed by all of you anyway, but that would be sort of my kind of creative recommendation. And then once you're ready, I think it's really important to share your manuscript with readers that you trust, and people who both will kind of give you, you know, constructive feedback, but also honest feedback. Don't give it to people who think are going to be nice to you. That's not going to help.
That's really good advice. And Ori, if I mean, Viola touched on a little bit of this. If writers are struggling to crack on with the editing, are there any ways they can make themselves accountable?
Well, that's perfect. You're reading my mind, because I have a friend who is writing manuscript, and she said to me, oh, I'm really struggling and my agent's giving me this deadline, all this kind of thing. And she was like, I don't know when I'm going to do it. And I said, well, if you tell me when your deadline is supposed to be, I will pest you and tell you that you need to have sent it by this day, or I'll check in with you. You can send me an updated draft, that kind of thing. Having someone else to help keep you accountable, I think, is really, really important. And I think also, if you're struggling to find sort of the words to write or struggling to edit, it might be that you've also sort of stepped away from looking at other reading as well. So it might be helpful to read some other books. I know that sometimes writers can find it hard. They find out they might accidentally copy someone else's voice, but if that's reading non-fiction or something that's completely outside of what you're writing, sometimes reading something completely outside of that can just help to get you back in the rhythm of things and helps get those sort of creative juices flowing. But I think definitely having someone external to keep you accountable is really helpful, because they have nothing to lose by pestering you other than your friendship, but that's your problem. So I think having someone to just say to you, okay, it's like Friday, where's your next draft, where's your next 500 words kind of thing, I think is really good.
That's brilliant. I love that. Millie, is there something you want to add to that? Maybe there's something around committing to a certain time of day or a certain number of words.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's kind of covered, being that you need that dedication and setting yourself targets. I mean, I would say, just as a publicist primarily, thinking maybe in a way that would help you structure your novel and think about things in a way, try and think of like an elevator pitch. Like if you are talking to someone about your novel, what would you say about it? And see if you can get that down to, you know, a good like 1 minute, 2 minute kind of pitch. And that will, I think, help you in the structure of it, and also help you going forward when your agent is like pitching you to editors, and me when I would be pitching you to journalists. If you can have that kind of structure, I think that would really help.
And B, is there something that aspiring writers can do to perhaps push through the fear, the loneliness that sometimes comes with being, you know, perhaps grappling with the edits? How do you keep your confidence going through what can be a long process?
I would say that, and Ori touched upon this, I think reading is really important. And I think I was struck really when I was reading for discoveries, the authors and the books that you all were referring to in your introductions, and actually that those influences really shone through. And it was interesting to see how many kind of thoroughly contemporary, right up until the very minute, authors were being mentioned, which was really wonderful to see. And I think it can really help just to see what's out there, and to be inspired, and to see other authors who have managed to do what you're doing. So also it's a fun break. So, you know, it's constructive, but also could kind of help to step away and give you confidence through what other people have achieved.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm just going to open it up really in terms of the advice you would give to aspiring writers who are moving on from 10,000 words to full manuscript. We've heard about how to keep going, but just thinking about that sort of editing process, how much kind of refining does it need to go through before it gets to the next stage of finding an agent?
I'm happy to take that one. I think the level of editing you need to focus on is not the kind of, you know, all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted. It's not that kind of really intense proofreading sort of editing, but it is really important, I think, to get your manuscript to a stage where you feel like the structure really works, the characters really work. You know, fundamentally, if you were to pick up this book, if you're able to take a step back, and if you were to say, you know, I'm picking up this book in a Waterstones, you know, I start reading it, am I engaged? Am I sticking with it? And so, of course, it is important to not have typos in there and to not have kind of odd sentence structure. But I think what agents are looking for, and what editors are looking for, and what readers are looking for are compelling characters, you know, really true emotions, family ties, relationships, you know, but they can't put down in a voice that they haven't maybe feel like they haven't heard before, kind of fresh take on a new old idea. And I think, you know, that's a lot of things to be aiming for, but basically, in a way, what I'm trying to say is edit till you think you've got yourself to where your book needs to be, but then allow yourself to go, you know, I'm not going to sit here agonizing, reading everything, you know, is every page numbered, just send it off.
Yeah, that's really powerful, actually, because that's about sort of refining your voice, you know, finding your voice and refining it. And I'm just thinking whether Ori might have some tips for aspiring writers about how they would go about doing that practically.
Ooh, that's a very good question. The thing is, I think when it comes to refining, I think the cool thing to focus on is make sure that everything you're writing helps to tell the story that you're trying to tell. Make sure that throughout your book, you know exactly what it is that the story is. So let's make up a terrible example on the spot, and I'm looking at a sofa. So I'll say, you're telling a story about someone who sells sofas and finds, I don't know, a finger in a sofa, and it opens up this murder mystery about what happened to the finger, whose finger is it, where is it? Someone can steal that story, I don't mind. I know it sounds fascinating. So you have to figure out, does a story of her going to the baker and getting a couple of pastries, which is a nice background filler, but does it lead to the story? Does it add to the story? Does it help to keep the reader engaged, or is it just sort of background filler? I think sometimes I think of it this way. In films, they have a lot of extras. They have people milling around in the background to make things feel more realistic. And you know that the extras are there, but they don't necessarily add to the story. Make sure that when you're thinking of a book, readers will fill in the gaps themselves, the gaps that are sort of the more day-to-day things, like how long it took them to go to the shop, or the fact that they put on their shoes before they left the house. Those are not the little extra things that you need to add in. Make sure that you sort of keep your story refined, because sometimes if you have too much description around a certain thing that's an everyday issue or an everyday occurrence that readers will know about, you start to lose the reader. So if you just keep your story really focused and remember that everything should feed into the story you're telling in some way or another. It doesn't have to be super obvious, so it doesn't have to be that she was on the sofa and then she felt something underneath herself and then she went to another person's house and she was feeling around the sofa for something else. Just every day, just sort of little things that make sure that feed into the story directly, and that keep the focus, so you keep the reader engaged. And I think being brutal in that sense as well is really helpful. I've had to say to authors before, like, I know you really like this line, I know you really like this character, but do you need this character? Do you need that line? And I think the more attached they are to it, the more I know it needs to go, because it's not actually that it's feeding the story, it's just that they really like it.
Your darlings.
Yeah.
That finger, it sounds like a historical sort of prime, the kind of thing Chris Lang should write in a whole new series of Unforgotten, I think. So we have a writer with a very clear view of her book. They know which genre it belongs in, and so should they be looking for an agent who has worked on other books that are similar? And if so, how do you go about finding that agent as a writer? Viola, I suppose this one's for you.
So I had some background noise I had to just deal with. How do you go about finding yourself an agent as a writer? That is the question you were asking, isn't it? And really,
yeah, and particularly where those writers are really confident about which genre they belong in.
Yeah, I think it's really important to make sure that when you're kind of querying or picking agents to approach, that you do really. I know it can be hard to sort of do your research when you're not in the industry, but I think there hopefully is quite a lot of information on different agents' websites about what they are and aren't looking for. And I think, you know, it's on the one hand, it's really good to query widely so that you give yourself as much opportunity as you can to find the right person for you. But I also think you have a clear idea of the genre that your book is, stick to agents that clearly represent or are interested in that genre. I've already mentioned their websites. That's a good way to have a look through and see who you can approach. And then I think also kind of working backwards and thinking about books that your book is like and authors that you're like and who they are represented by can be another good way of kind of finding that information out.
And what about acknowledgements in books? You know, books that you perhaps fit in with the genre that you're in, is always looking for the agent's name, perhaps, because
any kind of detective work you can do with that is perfect. Sometimes you get the editor's name in there too, so maybe that's, you know, that's even further.
I just want to show, like on our dialogue books, we at the end of our books, we put down the names of everyone who worked on the books. You probably can't see on my camera, but it's got editorial, marketing, sales, publicity. So you can kind of get a sense from, well, one, you'll know who the editor is, and also you can kind of get a sense of all the different people that work on the book. So maybe stalk them a bit on Twitter.
I absolutely love that you do that. So
yeah, it's like crediting everyone that's been involved in the process throughout the whole of the publication process. So let's imagine a writer has signed up with the agent to crack open the bubbly, and now to find the perfect partnership with a publisher. So Ori, how does that work? How do agents and publishers work together?
So I am so grateful for agents, because I could not do what they do, because I have a certain number of authors and it scares me having just them. And I know that agents can have multiple authors, and I know that relationship is professional, but it can also go into the personal a bit more as well. So major kudos to you guys. I don't know how you do what you do, but I'm grateful that you do. But so agents and publishers, it's also about building relationships with agents and publishers as well, between agents and publishers, because usually what I'll do is I will email, or an agent will email me, and we'll say, let's have a coffee, let's discuss like what you're looking for, and they'll tell me about stuff on their list as well. Or sometimes I won't have met up with them before, and they'll just email me and say, we haven't been in touch, but here's a book I think you might like. And so let's say I love the book, I take it to acquisitions, my whole team loves it, and then I put a bid in for the book, or I win an auction or something like that, or I put in a preempt, and hopefully we'll get onto what those different times mean later. And I acquire the book. My relationship, well, the agent's job, which they do very well, is to make sure that I do my job essentially, and that I am doing everything possible to make their author's book a success. So they will email me and say, hi, what's the update? What's happening with the publishing? When can we expect proofs? What's your publicity plan? What's your marketing plan? And then I will email someone in marketing and say, hello, what is our marketing plan? Well, we'll discuss this beforehand. I won't just email them out of the blue. But their job essentially is to make sure that I do my job and to advocate for their author. And the way that I kind of think of it is that outside of having an agent, the author is the advocate for their book. And they're the advocate for their book within the industry, outside of the industry, and then again, agent, and that agent is the advocate for their book outside of the industry and within the industry, particularly in publishing houses as well. And then when it gets an editor, the editor is then the advocate for that book within the industry and also outside the industry as well, in terms of talking to retailers like me and talking to booksellers, and making sure that we spread the word about the book as far as possible. That agent is nonetheless still one of the most important advocates for that book, because they're the ones who've helped to shape it with the author in the first instance, and then also to bring it and to guide the author in terms of helping them to choose the right publisher as well. So it's a really important relationship to have trust, because if an agent doesn't trust you, well, then they're not going to send you in the first place anyway. But it's important to have trust because it means that you can work together a lot better, because I think the more reliable an editor is in terms of being in constant communication with the author and the agent and making sure that they know what's going on with the book, I think the more likely you are, or the less likely you are to receive emails saying, hello, what is going on with this book? I haven't heard anything in 3 months. Tell me what's happening. But no, it's fun. And I think there are a lot of fantastic agents out there, and I have loved, particularly coming up in my career, getting to know all of them, because they all have really different tastes. And I do something whenever I turn down a book, I say, I really hope to have a book with you, because I think it's really important to have books with lots of different people and get different perspectives. And I think it's also interesting to work with different agents and learn about how they work as well. So very, very important relationship. Be nice to agents. They are very important.
I love that insight to the importance of having a trusted relationship. It's fundamentally about relationships, but also the whole publisher approach, and I guess to generating exposure for that book. Everybody gets involved in that process. I mean, do you think writers have to accept that when it comes to you, Ori, that it's going to change, that they have to accept some changes to their novel?
Yeah, and I think agents also do a good job of telling their authors that as well, that we're going to do this work, but it's going to an editor, and their title is editor, so they are going to edit your book. So I think they do know that. But something I always try to say to my authors is, this is your story, and I always try to understand what's the core story you're trying to tell. I'm going to give you suggestions, but I'm not going to force you to do anything. And I say that in sort of a guilt trip way, so that they know that my suggestions, you don't have to take them, but I'm doing you the favor of giving them to you anyway. So I always try to make sure that in every change I'm trying to make, I'm just trying to help their story become better. I'm not trying to make it into something I want it to be, because they're the ones who've come up with the idea in the first place. So it's important to keep true to what it is that they're trying to say, and to make sure that they feel happy with what it is that they've got. And it's also, as I said, sort of about trusting, the trust between agents and publishers, also about the trust between an author and an editor. Because you'd say you've been writing your book for a couple of years or a few months or something like that, still to hand it over to someone else and say, okay, do your worst, tell me everything you don't like about it, and tell me how you think I can make it better. That takes a lot of trust. So I know that it's not an easy thing to do, to trust someone with something like that. So I think they do know, to answer the question, they do know that something's going to happen to their book, and that not something's going to happen to it that sounds bad, that I'm going to edit it, I'm going to make changes, good changes.
Yeah, I think this is what tonight is all about, really, is trying to demystify that process of getting an actual book published. And if you hear any music in the background, I think my neighbour's having a rave. Really sorry if you can hear that. B, if I may come to you next, can you tell us a little bit about the book's journey from publication to the shop floor? How does the retail journey work?
That's a very good question. I wish I knew. No, it's the book's journey to the shop floor kind of starts way before the pub date. So currently we're working with publishers on books that are coming out between July and December this year. So we'll already kind of be putting into place plans to kind of make each book work as hard as it can when it reaches its publication date. So that can be anything from liaising with the authors to organise signed copies or exclusive editions, to pinpointing what the debut books are that we think we should really be putting our weight behind, and making sure that as many booksellers as possible are getting copies of those books to read, so that when they land in the shops they are fully equipped to talk about them with their customers and really passionately enthuse about them. Also with the kind of big books, we'll be planning events, we'll be planning signings, and just kind of getting the most out of each opportunity, basically. Then obviously the real hard work comes when the books actually arrive, and really the most important thing, I mean, everything that I do and that my team does is it's really in service of making sure that the booksellers are as fully equipped as they can be, both in terms of resources and knowledge, then it's over to them. So the booksellers are the kind of lifeblood of our company. It's all about them, and each shop has its own customer base and its own character and its own market, and the booksellers who work in them are the experts on that. So, you know, we don't at Waterstones anyway, there's none of this kind of these books must go there or put these posters up or, you know, anything. It's very much, you know, it's your shop, it's your character. So we and the publishers that we work with, so I work incredibly closely mainly with sales departments, but also with publicists like Millie and editors and you know, the kind of the full teams there. What we're doing is making sure that they are ready and fully equipped. And then it's really up to the booksellers to talk and to kind of share their passion with their customers. So, you know, we've got an incredible team of people out there on the ground, and it's really about kind of connecting the right books with the right booksellers who can then connect them with the right customers, which is really kind of what it's all about. And I suppose that brings me kind of nicely background to kind of one of the main things I took from the reading, which was that publishing and book selling is really all about word of mouth. And I kind of, what I think Ori was referring to a bit earlier about kind of the service to making sure that everything you're writing is in service to your plot. What really struck me when I was reading and kind of putting together the cover letters with the actual the main material was that the ones that really stood out were the authors who really kind of knew what they were writing, and, you know, not necessarily the most polished kind of finished copy, but the books, the extracts where they were really, really well linked with the pictures. And I think, you know, if you as an author know what you're writing, it's so much easier for a bookseller or for an editor or for a friend or reader to talk about that book as well. So that's definitely something to think about, and kind of comes back to what Millie was saying about thinking about your pitches.
Thank you, B. That was really great. I mean, you mentioned word of mouth there. It's incredibly important. You know, librarians and booksellers are a source of trusted recommendations. Millie, as a publicity manager, your aim is to generate exposure and interest in your writers and their books. So how do you go about building an audience for a new unknown writer?
It's work, which I love. It's so exciting to always bring a new voice into the publishing world. So I think the main thing is basically I work very closely with the editor of the book to kind of come up with a list of authors that we can send proofs to start, you know, to get those first readers and those first quotes from people who are already established within the industry and that they have a kind of bit of a name recognition. So if they're recommending these books and talking about them, then we have a good background level to kind of build up from there. So part of my job, basically what I do in publicity is I speak to journalists who work across the newspapers, radio, TV, online, bookshop owners for events, librarians for events as well, basically trying to get as many people as possible to know about this book. And yeah, when you originally start having those initial quotes from authors, that really helps. Then I will be sending out those proofs to those people and pitching the author, basically saying, you know, what is different about it, why it's special, what we love about it. This is why you should love this book too. And that obviously the people that I speak to depends on the genre of the book as well. You know, there will be some journalists who only read crime fiction, so there's no point in sending them a fantasy novel because that's just not what they're going to read. So that's part of my job, is like curating those lists on who I would send those books to and really get those champions going forward. So we just like build and build and build, and then hopefully on publication what we'll have is lots of reviews, the author wanting to be interviewed, people on social media talking about the book, but that's, you know, not 100% always necessary. But yeah, that's what we want. And festivals. I forgot about festivals. Also festivals.
I hugely admire the work of publicists. I really do. And also, this is the value of a publisher. It's having the expert quality editorial, the role of the editor, and then it's the publicity, it's the sales, you know, everything working together to make sure the book's a huge success.
I think that's it. You definitely will want to work together. The most successful books are when everyone is working together. So the editor, the publicist, the sales team, the agent, like everyone, the author, we're all on the same page. That sounds so cliche. We're all on the same page.
And what about writers being on social media? How significant is that? Do they need to be on social media to get a book deal, to connect directly with audiences?
I personally don't think that you have to be on social media, and actually quite a few of my, well, also I think it depends on what social media you feel the most comfortable in. So I've had a couple of my authors start out being on Twitter and Instagram and on, you know, all of the social media, and they just decide, actually, I don't want to be on Twitter anymore. I don't like it. This isn't the medium for me that I really like and engage with my audience. And they come off it, and I'm like, that's fine. You can do what you want. It's your, like, the thing is, when you have social media, it basically does invite people to come in, you know, you are contactable all of the time. And I think people should be allowed, and authors should be able to control that level of how much they're in contact with their audience. But, you know, if you like Instagram and you like posting pictures, then I would be like, well, just stay on Instagram if you want to do that. If you want to post videos, I don't even know how you would do that on TikTok. I'm like the most Luddite person on it ever, but if you want to be on TikTok, be on TikTok, you know, but it's not, for me, it's not necessary. And I don't think that someone would look at a debut author and be like, well, they're not on social media, so I'm not going to bother. I don't think they should be on it. I mean, you know, if you were writing a non-fiction book about social media and you weren't on social media, or unless the book was don't be on social media, then I think that people would have a problem with it. But in terms of for like general publicity wise, I don't see it as a problem.
That's where often local community engagement can be really important in building a buzz locally as well. Yeah,
exactly. And, you know, people will find their audience. You know, if you're not on social media, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be talking to people at, you know, obviously not this year, but, you know, you meet people at events, you can have a really good relationship with your local bookshop. You can do all of these things that are real life connections that aren't online, that probably are going to end up being just as lucrative for you as an author.
Yeah, brilliant. Viola, do you have a different view as an agent? Do you prefer your authors to be on social media?
No, I don't. I was about to say, I wish I did, so I could say something, you know, else, but I completely agree with Millie. I think it's very different. Obviously, Discovery is a fiction prize, so we're only talking about that. It is different with non-fiction. A platform can be super helpful because it can just give that sort of extra level of authenticity and a reason for why you're the one talking about it. But with fiction, I think all it comes down to and really boils down to is the book really good? And that's going to be the #1 seller for your book. And I don't think, you know, sometimes people ask, you know, should we go on social media? I think also you can really tell if somebody doesn't feel comfortable on a platform. And then I think just trying to create something feels inauthentic and you don't want to do it, and it's a time suck and it's just a waste. And I think, you know, if it's not for you, it's certainly not something that I would ever go, oh, they're not on social media. It's not a worry for me.
Yeah. Brilliant, thank you. We're going to go to the audience questions now. And given we started a little late, I hope we can finish a little later as well. So I'm going to go to Kelsey's question. Some of this we covered, but I think it might be good just to expand on this. Does the manuscript have to be fully finished before approaching an agent?
I don't think it does need to be fully finished. I think it can be really beneficial if it is, because most agents will ask you for a synopsis and around 10,000 words, which you've already got. So that's amazing. You've already got, you know, what you need. But if you then have agents coming back to you going, oh my goodness, I love it, can't wait to read the rest of it, it would be ideal to be able to say, well, here's the rest of the manuscript. I don't think that, you know, that it would be too problematic if you had said, well, this is sort of, I'm only 30,000 words in so far, perhaps we can keep talking and then you can keep that dialogue going. I think that's definitely something you can do. So it's absolutely not a kind of you must have every single word on the page and be ready. but just be aware that, you know, it might be helpful for you to also keep your writing journey going, because I think, you know, if you've got 10,000 words, that's brilliant, but you are ultimately hopefully going to get yourself to a full-length novel. So actually maybe use it as a reason to need to push yourself to get there, and then start submitting.
That's great, thank you, Viola. Naomi has a question. This is about getting useful feedback, and we did touch on this about not sharing it with your friends because they're just going to say nice things about it. So Naomi said it can be really hard to get honest and useful feedback you need when you don't know anyone in the industry. Do you have any suggestions for finding the right kind of person to ask for feedback? Is this where writing groups and agencies like Arvon come into play, and the literary consultancy?
I think writing groups are a really good place to start with this. I'm never one to suggest that people go and, like, you know, pay editor. You know, I don't think entering into sort of paid for editorial consultation is the first step you need to go for, because that can be incredibly expensive and it's not something that many people can do. And I think it, you know, it's actually better to get yourself into a position where you find a writers group, you find people who you trust, you find people who you can talk creatively with, and you understand, you know, you then know that you also trust their judgment. And that's an important stage of it too. So you're not just sending it to somebody cold. And then within that sort of creative world, you can share and get feedback. And I think that's a really good way to go.
Thank you. Any other tips? Okay. So then we've got a question here about what sort of word count is ideal for a finished first draft. I mean, I think, Viola, you've said it's okay to share a work in progress. And
yeah, and I think a word count is a difficult thing. It's sort of like, how long is a piece of string? I also saw there was a question about advances, and I'm happy to try and answer it, but both those things can be how long is a piece of string. I think with literary fiction, you can definitely get away with shorter word counts, sort of 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 words. And that feels like a sort of natural, perfectly encapsulated sort of novella almost. But then I think with more general and kind of commercial fiction, or sort of longer novels, the sort of thing you can sort of see on my bookshelf, that kind of 400 pages, they're around 100,000 words. So sort of say anything between sort of 80 to 120, you're looking in and around, I'd say, the benchmark for a full-length novel. Again, you know, if you're writing that sort of novel, I know there's a big question about genre as well, but, you know, a novel that you feel is a full-length story and you're at sort of 50,000 words, I would recommend you keep thinking about an extra plot strand you can add in there where you can expand the story. But otherwise, you know, if it's sort of 70, I think, and you feel like you're there, I think, you know, you could be in a good position to send off and hopefully then get somebody else in for the next stage to help you develop it even further.
That's brilliant insight. Thank you so much, Viola. A question from Elizabeth on rejection. She says, I've had quite a lot of full manuscript requests followed by very nice and encouraging rejections. It basically boiled down to, I didn't love it enough, or I need to be 100% convinced. How many full manuscript rejections until I put the book aside? I'm working on something else.
It's really tough, and it can be really tough when you don't get specific feedback. And I'm sure I've been guilty of that myself. Not really specific feedback. Sometimes it can be hard to put a finger on what it is that's not quite connecting you to the story. I think, you know, the time to put it aside is when you feel like you have exhausted all the avenues in the agents that you are keen to work with, and, you know, you haven't got any further. And maybe you've also tried, you know, sharing the manuscript with some kind of trusted friends, and for something that isn't clicking there as well, then I think it might be time to put it aside. It doesn't mean it's gone, you know, it means it's in your bottom drawer. It's just ready to maybe return to when you've learned a bit more about the sort of writer you are.
Great, thank you. A question from Beverly about the impact of the pandemic. Has the pandemic affected the types of novels that will be picked up by publishers and booksellers? Should we be mindful of this as we finish our manuscripts? Such a great question. Who'd like to take that one?
I can start off. I I'm going to say no. I don't think the pandemic has actually, do you know what, if it has changed anything, it's made people read more widely, I think. I think literary fiction has become a lot more accessible. I think a lot of people are reading rom-com. I know that I dove desperately back into rom-coms as escapist fiction at the beginning of the pandemic, because I was like, I just need something to take my mind off the seriousness of life. And I think that people are also reading, which is quite strange, people are reading a lot of coronavirus related either fiction or non-fiction as well. So I don't think it's not changed in a bad way. I think it's got a lot more people reading, actually. I think it's really improved. I mean, obviously, apart from the fact that a lot of bookshops and things like that were closed, I think it's actually made people want to read a lot more. I know that we were talking earlier about how we were going into bookshops again, and I went into my local Waterstones, and I was like having to edge around people to get into the shop because it was quite full. And I think there isn't a type of thing specifically that people aren't willing to read now. I think because people were obviously all stuck at home and they got back into reading, things like that, because we all finished Netflix, we all finished Amazon Prime, we had to do something that was reading. I think it's actually opened up and broadened the scope for a lot of publishers for what they're willing to publish, because they know that people are reading more widely and they want to reach more audiences. So I think obviously the pandemic is not a good thing at all, but I think if there is a positive to come out of it industry-wise, I think it's that it's opened up reading, opened up fiction and non-fiction for a lot more people who maybe weren't reading it before.
And that shows in the huge surge in book sales, 200 million print book sales last year, and the surge in library book borrowing as well. So fantastic news and libraries and bookshops. Brilliant. Does anybody else want to add to that? Millie, what are you seeing in terms of from a publicity point of view and a press point of view?
Yeah, I mean, actually from a publicity point of view, I mean, I get a lot of requests from journalists being like, I would like to write about anything else apart from the pandemic, please. And actually like a focus on the more like positive stories, or actually just a bit, well, to be honest, just anything. I think publicity, I think at the moment, and my like personal taste is in terms of like reading about if anything's changed. Like I don't want to read about the pandemic. I think like Ori was saying, I kind of want an escapism, and novels are definitely the way to do that. So yeah, I mean, I think it hasn't changed it massively apart from people are reading more. Great.
I would say the one thing I'm thinking is that we are going to have to work out, because when we thought this was going to be like 2 months and we were all kind of live thinking, woohoo, just some time from working from home. That's a bit flippant, I know, I shouldn't be joking about it, but you know, it's now over a year in, and we are going to have to work out how to not just skip from 2020 to 2022 in fiction and have nothing written that's set in the middle. But I think focusing on books that are about coronavirus is not going to be the way to go forward. You know, as a backdrop, as something that, as Ori said beforehand, if it helps your story, if there's a reason why it's there, and you can use it to kind of further the plot, further the character development, whatever it is, then great. If it's just, if you're actually sort of layering characters on top of a book about coronavirus, you're starting from the wrong place.
Yeah.
Agree completely. I think it's interesting actually to how many books spookily were written before all of this about pandemics. So actually we had quite a few come out last year, which were kind of eerily prescient. But I would say, you know, and I think a few of the entries that we read had similar stories, I think. But I would say that I slightly dread the number of COVID novels that kind of just use it as a device in the coming years, especially bearing in mind the amount of time that the publishing journey takes, and the kind of how relevant and how tired we'll all be of it when that time kind of elapses.
That's a really good point about the schedule, because it's like 2.5, 3 years from now, maybe.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There are so many brilliant questions, and I'm sorry that we haven't managed to get through them all. But sadly, that's all we've got time for in terms of audience questions. But I just wanted to open it up to the panel again to share one top tip now that you've read the submissions that aspiring writers can build on when they take their 10,000 words to the next stage. What would be your one top tip? B.
It's really hard. I think we've touched upon this previously, but I think my my absolute top tip would be just to take a step back and to really think what you're trying to achieve with it. The absolute strongest submissions are all those that where the writer really knows what their book is and knows how to talk about it, and that will help other people to talk about it, whether that's you yourself selling it to an agent or editor, them selling it onwards to along the link, and then ultimately readers recommending amongst themselves. So just to kind of zoom out and really think about what you're trying to achieve.
Honing the pitch, really, really important. Millie?
Yeah, I mean, I just completely agree with what Bea just said. I think I'm all about the pitching. So yeah, I think honing it down to my top tip would be see if you can get it down to 3 or 4 sentences in terms of what your pitch is going to be. I know it's painful and hard, but that will be, I think it will, make things a lot clearer in your mind, and will just, help going forward.
Ori?
Just actually picking back off what Bea said in terms of being able to talk about it, make sure that you love what you're writing. Make sure you care about it. Not that it needs to be your life's passion, because you might, like I said, you might be writing about a finger in a sofa, you might not care that much about sofas, but make sure that you write what you love and what you're writing about is true to you as a person. Because I think sometimes people might feel like they have to write a certain genre because it's really popular, they have to write a certain topic because people are reading about it. When you have to talk about it and people are asking you questions, you'll be sort of stuck for words because it's not something that you're necessarily interested in or that doesn't feel true to you. So whilst I did say, read sort of outside of what you're reading, just in case you sort of lose creative flow, make sure that what you're writing still stays true to you as a person and what your writing style is and what you feel comfortable with. Because I think people will be able to see it reflected in your writing if you're writing something for a specific purpose or you're writing to fit a certain mold. When what the reader wants to see is your creative juices on the page and how your mind works on the page. So make sure you write what you love.
Write what you love in the hope that others will fall in love with it too. Yeah, fab. Thank you. Viola?
I think that's a really, really good point. I will give a different one, but I think being true to yourself is super important, because someone once, I don't know who it was, said that little nugget, which I love, is, dream isn't to be published, it's to be read. And I think the way that you're going to get there is by putting like your heart and soul and you into the book, because it's that authenticity and that realness that's going to make it happen. But I was thinking right back to what Bea was saying at the beginning, where I think, I don't know, it just felt, seeing where you've got to, what you've done, and not be daunted by the fact that you've got, say, 90,000 words left to go. Try your hardest. I know it's really hard when you're in that situation, but to kind of look at the positives of where you are, and, looking at other authors and seeing where they've got to, debut authors coming out and people sharing their, prize long listings or whatever it is, try and harness that positivity, because I know that it's a long journey and everyone on here is really trying their hardest and putting their all into it to get where they want to be, and it's not easy, but fingers crossed, if you keep going, you'll get there. And I think keeping that positivity and harnessing the energy of people around you and seeing that they're getting there and to keep going is really important.
I love that. The energy and the positivity. Thank you so much. To everybody watching tonight, do look out for the announcement of our long list of 16 Discoveries writers on Wednesday the 28th of April, our short list of 6 on Wednesday the 19th of May, and our winner on Wednesday the 9th of June. All long-listed, shortlisted and winning writers will be notified by email. In the meantime, we want to offer you support and inspiration to keep writing during and beyond the Discoveries process. And we have 2 special opportunities for you that have been popped into the chat. So if you are still working on your draft, either continuing on from your first 10,000 words or editing and want some inspiration and support, we've curated a writer's toolkit featuring advice from our Discoveries judges and Curtis Brown colleagues. And we hope you find all the resources we're putting in the chat really useful and inspiring. And we are very happy to offer all of you exclusive discounted access to the Women's Prize for Fiction 2021 Virtual Shortlist Festival, taking place on the 14th, 15th and 16th of June. So save the dates and book your tickets using the link and password, which I'm sure you've received by email, and hopefully Rosie will pop it in the chat as well. I would like to thank our brilliant panelists panelists for all their wisdom and insight and encouragement to keep writing. I know so many people on the other side of the screen will have been scribbling down notes, and hopefully one day soon we'll be able to all meet again in a bookshop or a festival and do this kind of event in person. So that's all from us and from my amazing panel, and Georgina at NatWest and Rosie at the Women's Prize. So thank you so much again for joining us. Keep going, keep writing. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.